Back in the early 2000s, life seemed stable. I had a wife, 2 little kids, and what I thought was a steady family routine. My wife only worked part-time, so most of her days were spent either with the kids or running errands. At least that's what I believed. But then, little details started to stand out. Not big dramatic things, just small inconsistencies, things that only matter if you're paying close attention. Our kids, 4 and 6 at the time, were talkative in that way kids are, unfiltered, chatty, and completely innocent. They'd come home chattering about how they'd spent the day with grandma and grandpa. Cute, right? Except here's the problem. My wife's parents lived a good 90 minutes away, not exactly around the corner. The first couple of times I brushed it off. Maybe she wanted help with the kids. Maybe she missed her folks. But then it became regular. 2, sometimes 3 times a week. Basically, any day she wasn't scheduled at work. And that didn't add up. Who drives 3 hours round trip, multiple times a week, just so their kids can see their grandparents? The uneasy feeling started eating at me. At dinner, while we watched TV, even while I tried to fall asleep at night. That gnawing thought, something isn't right here. So I asked her about it, casually at first. Hey, the kids said they were at your parents' again today. You're making that drive a lot, huh? Her reaction, defensive. Too defensive. She waved it off, said the kids probably just like talking about their grandparents. Said I was overthinking things. But here's the thing. My wife has never been a good liar. Her tone was too sharp, her smile too forced. And if you've ever been in a long relationship, you know when something's off. I couldn't shake it. That's when I started watching her car mileage. Sounds paranoid, right? Maybe it was. But my gut was screaming at me. And sure enough, the numbers told the truth. She was clocking an extra 400 miles a week. That wasn't running errands. That wasn't a casual lunch with her mom. That was something else. The betrayal hadn't even been confirmed yet, but I could feel it tightening around me. A heaviness in my chest. That awful, gut-deep certainty that the person you love, the person you built a life with, is lying straight to your face. I wanted to believe I was wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong. But the mileage didn't lie. And soon enough, neither did she. The discovery. One ordinary afternoon, I sat down at the family computer. And there it was, like some cosmic accident or maybe fate itself. A sticky note. Her AOL password. Just sitting there next to the keyboard. I wish I could say I hesitated. That I respected her privacy. That I wasn't about to cross a line. But that would be a lie. My hands shook as I typed in her login. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. And then there they were. Emails. Dozens of them. Between her and her old college best friend. At first just normal chatter. Updates, jokes, gossip. But then, the bomb dropped. My wife wasn't just visiting her parents. She wasn't just running errands. She was meeting up with an ex-boyfriend from high school. Not just meeting up. Sleeping with him. Regularly. The words cut into me like knives. Seeing her type out, in her own words, the details of how she would drop our kids off and go spend the afternoon in a dingy motel with him. Reading her talk trash about the man's wife, mocking how she'd gained weight after having kids, like it was all some big joke. That was the moment the floor gave out beneath me. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't mileage on a car. It wasn't an odd story from the kids. This was cold, undeniable proof. My wife was cheating. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like my skin was on fire. My hands went numb, my stomach twisted, and a part of me, some fragile part that still believed in us, died on the spot. I printed those emails. Every single one. Stuffed them away in a folder. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew I'd need them. And in that moment, one thought kept circling in my mind. I will not let her do to our kids what my parents did to me. Because, you see, my parents cheated on each other. Both of them. And the fallout? It wrecked me and my siblings. Our childhood was nothing but chaos, bitterness, and resentment. And I had sworn that I would never let my kids live through the same nightmare. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about breaking a promise to our children. And that, I couldn't forgive. The breaking point. Once you know, you can't unknow. Every time she smiled at me, I saw the lies. Every time she told me she was heading to her parents, I pictured that motel room. I knew I couldn't just sit on this. I needed clarity. Proof beyond doubt. Something no one could dismiss. So I reached out to a friend, a cop. Told him I suspected my wife was cheating, laid out the situation. He listened, sighed, and gave me a name. A guy who used to be on the force but had left to work as a private investigator. Call Ron, he said. If something's going on, he'll find it. Ron. Just an ordinary name, but in that moment it felt like hope. I called him the next day, and that call? That's when everything started to change. The PI investigation. Ron wasn't the kind of guy you see in TV shows. No trench coat, no dramatic flair. He was calm, methodical, and spoke with the steady confidence of someone who'd seen it all. When I told him what I suspected, he didn't laugh or judge. He just asked for details: work schedule, in-laws address, the days she usually made those visits. I gave him everything. The emails, the mileage logs, even the notes I'd started keeping in a pocket journal. Writing down patterns, times, little things I noticed. Ron nodded, jotted down notes of his own, and said, "Give me a couple of weeks." A couple of weeks. Do you know how long that feels when you're waiting for proof your marriage is a lie? Every day felt like a war zone inside my own head. I'd wake up beside her, pretending not to know. Pretending not to hear the lies in her voice when she said she was heading to mom's. I'd kiss my kids goodnight, tuck them in, and wonder if tomorrow she'd use them as a cover again. I was living in a house full of ghosts. Ghosts of trust, ghosts of promises broken, ghosts of the woman I thought I knew. And then Ron called. "Got something for you," he said. The proof. I met him in a small coffee shop. My palms were sweating before I even sat down. Ron slid a manila envelope across the table. No words, no build-up. Just an envelope. Inside were photographs. My wife, smiling as she walked into a restaurant. My wife, sitting across from a man. Him, sharing lunch like it was the most natural thing in the world. My wife, walking with him into a cheap motel. And then, hours later, walking back out with him, hair a little messy, expression smug. The timestamps were clear. The locations undeniable. Ron had logged it all. Where she dropped off the kids. When she met the guy. How long they stayed in that dingy motel. He even had receipts pulled from background digging, credit card charges that lined up perfectly with the photos. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't even just emails. It was ironclad evidence. And sitting there in that coffee shop, flipping through photo after photo, I felt two things. Absolute devastation. A strange, cold calm. Because now, I knew. I finally knew the truth. Who was he? Ron didn't stop at just following my wife. He dug into the guy she was seeing. His name? Bob. On paper, Bob was doing well. Married, 3 kids, a vice president of sales at a company his father-in-law owned. Nice house, nice life. The whole suburban success story. And yet here he was, crawling into motel rooms with my wife. I stared at the printout Ron gave me, Bob's photo, his address, details about his family, and I felt disgust bubble up inside me. Not just at my wife, not just at Bob, but at the arrogance of it all. They thought they could just live this double life, that I'd stay in the dark forever. But not anymore. The decision. I went home that night and sat alone in the living room. The kids were asleep upstairs. My wife was pretending to watch TV, scrolling on her phone. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, folder in my lap, staring at her. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw things or beg her to stop. I wasn't going to make my kids watch their father unravel. I was going to be smart, strategic. If she wanted to blow up this marriage, fine. But she wasn't taking me or my kids down with her. And Bob, he wasn't getting away clean either. Calling the lawyer. The very next day, I booked an appointment with a divorce lawyer. Walking into that office felt surreal. I never thought I'd be that guy. The man planning his escape from a marriage that once felt unshakable. I laid it all out. The emails, the PI's report, the photos. The lawyer skimmed through, then looked up at me and said, "Well, you're in a strong position. Let's draw up papers." Strong position. It wasn't the kind of victory you celebrate with champagne, but it was a lifeline, a way forward. I signed the retainer, shook his hand, and walked out with divorce papers ready to be served. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The second target. Ron's investigation had given me more than proof of my wife's betrayal. It had given me a map of Bob's life. His wife. His kids. His job. And as much as I hated what my wife had done, Bob wasn't just some side player. He was an active participant. A married man sneaking around, betraying his own family while helping shatter mine. His wife deserved to know. So I asked Ron for a favor. "Can you meet with her?" I said. "Show her what you showed me?" He hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "She deserves to know." And that was the final piece of my plan. The setup. The timing had to be perfect. On the day my wife was served with divorce papers, right in the middle of her workday, blindsiding her in front of her co-workers, Ron would deliver the same truth to Bob's wife. 2 lives, 2 affairs, detonated in sync. I almost felt guilty planning it out like some military strike. But then I'd remember the look on my kids' faces when they told me about another day with grandma, the way my wife smirked in those emails, the arrogance of Bob sliding into a motel with her. Well, this wasn't cruelty. This was justice, the calm before the storm. The night before it all went down, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me. I thought about my parents, about the screaming matches, the slammed doors, the way my childhood turned into a battlefield because two people couldn't keep their promises. And I swore again that I would not repeat that cycle. My kids deserved better. By morning, the calm had settled over me, cold, steady, unshakable, because the storm was coming, and she had no idea. It was a Thursday, ordinary to anyone else, but to me, it felt like doomsday and liberation rolled into one. I got up early, got the kids ready, packed their lunches, drove them to school. My wife kissed me on the cheek, like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't hiding entire motel rooms worth of betrayal behind that smile. And I let her. I let her walk out the door believing her world was still intact. Because in just a few hours, everything was going to come crashing down. Served at work. The lawyer had arranged for the papers to be served at her job. She worked part-time at an office. Clerical stuff, nothing fancy, but she loved the little bubble of attention she got there. I knew she'd hate nothing more than being embarrassed in front of her co-workers. At exactly 10:43 a.m., the server walked into her office. Calm, professional, holding a manila envelope with her name on it. "Are you her full name?" "Yes," she said, confused. "You've been served." The look on her face, I can only imagine. So, confusion, maybe anger. She called me minutes later, voice shrill, sputtering half sentences like someone trying to put out a fire with gasoline. "What is this? Divorce? Are you serious right now?" My tone was ice. "I'm very serious." She tried to argue, backpedal, deflect. But I didn't let her. "This isn't a conversation," I said. "This is happening." And then I hung up. For once, she didn't get the last word. Meanwhile, across town, while my wife's world was imploding at her office, Ron was on the other side of town, sliding another manila envelope across a different kitchen table. Bob's wife. Ron told me later how it went. How she sat there, hands trembling as she flipped through photos of her husband with my wife. How her face drained of color, how her breathing hitched when she saw the timestamps, the hotel receipts. She whispered, "That bastard," and for a long time she just stared at the evidence in silence. Ron didn't push. He just said, "You deserve to know. What you do with this is up to you." And with that, the bomb was dropped. The first cracks. That evening, my wife came home like a hurricane. She slammed the door, stomped into the kitchen, and threw the divorce papers on the counter. "Are you out of your mind?" she snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't match her fury. Instead, I pulled out the folder, the emails, the photos, the PI report, and spread them across the table. Her face went pale. "You think I don't know?" I said quietly. "You think I haven't been watching this whole time?" She stammered. Denied at first, then tried to spin it. "It didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake. We can fix this." But the evidence was right there, staring her in the face, and I was done. "This marriage is over," I told her. "You made sure of that. I won't drag our kids through this nightmare. From now on, I only deal with you about them. Nothing else." For the first time in years, she had nothing to say. The explosion in Bob's world. If my house was tense, Bob's house was nuclear. His wife didn't just confront him, she detonated. According to the court filings I later dug through, she emptied their joint bank account, packed up the kids, and left that very night. Moved straight back into her parents' house. And Bob? He came home to an empty house and a note that said it all. "I know everything. Don't come looking for us." But it didn't stop there. Bob's father-in-law owned the company he worked at. When his wife showed her parents the proof, Bob wasn't just in trouble with his marriage, he was in trouble with his career. Within days, he was fired. Just like that, the man who thought he could juggle a family, a job, and an affair, lost it all. My quiet satisfaction. I wish I could say I celebrated. That I popped a bottle of champagne, laughed in his face, or gloated about the revenge. But the truth? My satisfaction was quieter. I'd sit on the couch at night, folder tucked away in my desk, and just breathe. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control. She thought I'd never find out. He thought he could play me for a fool. But I'd turned their lies into their undoing. The ripple effect. The fallout didn't just end with a firing and a split marriage. Court documents showed Bob's divorce got ugly. Custody battles, restraining orders, police involvement. One incident even ended with his wife's brother breaking his nose during an argument. Bob, the polished VP in suits and ties, was suddenly just another guy in mugshots and legal filings. And me? I wasn't even involved. I just lit the fuse by telling the truth. That's the thing about revenge done right. It doesn't always require fire or fury. Sometimes it's as simple as exposure. Sunlight on secrets, and then you just watch as the rot destroys itself. The aftermath at home. My wife and I still had kids to raise, so I kept things civil. No screaming matches, no public mudslinging. I set boundaries and stuck to them. We became business partners in parenting, nothing more. And once the kids were grown, I cut off all ties. She became just someone I used to know. Do I hate her? No. Hate takes energy and she's not worth mine. But do I care about her beyond the fact that she's my kid's mom? Not one bit. As for Bob, he disappeared. No social media, no trace online. Rumor had it he skipped the state, maybe chasing a fresh start somewhere no one knew his name. Meanwhile, his ex-wife thrived. She went to work at her dad's company, worked her way up, and eventually took it over after he retired. She turned betrayal into strength. And honestly, I respect the hell out of that. Reflection. Looking back, I don't see myself as a hero. I wasn't perfect. Maybe I was cold, maybe I was calculating. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my kids grow up in chaos like I did. And in the end, that decision saved us. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Secrets always surface. Lies always collapse. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't what you do to them. It's watching them destroy themselves with the truth.